All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our annual Study in Canada training. My name is Welly Custono, the Director of Canadian Education International Indonesia. We are a not-for-profit foundation mandated by the Embassy of Canada to promote Canadian education in this country. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you back again. Probably most of you have attended these annual trainings for several times in the past few years. So it's really glad to see everyone back again, and even some of new participants as well. Thank you very much for allocating your time this morning out of must be a busy day and listen to the latest update about Canadian education as their landscape as a overseas study destination. So once again, thank you for tuning in. And I do hope that this session today will be a beneficial one for everyone. All right. So I'd like to begin today's training by giving an update about where Canada positioned themselves in the global landscape as an education destination, overseas education destination, especially with all of the changes that have happened in the previous year. I'm pleased to update you that Canada remains in the top 4 most popular overseas destination countries for international students worldwide, based on our latest figure from CBIE 2024. There were close to 1 million students, international students, they are currently studying in Canada. And with regards from the Indonesian perspective, we are also in the top 10 among Indonesian students as a destination to study abroad. As per data from UNESCO 2023, there are close to 1,400 Indonesian students studying in Canada at the time. Now, if we are looking only at countries that utilize English as the main language of instruction, so English-speaking destinations, then Canada is even in the top 5 for Indonesian students. So this is consistent to the current global situation. And something that quite stand out and unique with Canada as an overseas study destination is the fact that close to 3/4, 75% of all international students studying in Canada are post-secondary students. So we are looking at students graduating from high school and carrying on with post-secondary education, either at college, institutes, polytechnics, and universities. And the popular provinces in Canada remain consistent across the years, where more than half of the international students studied in Ontario. And Ontario is also the province with the most number of education institutions, including universities. So it is really no surprise that majority of the international students do study in Ontario. So some of the popular cities are like Toronto and Ottawa. About 1/5, 20% of these international students, they study in British Columbia. And BC has its own unique characteristic. Even though Canada, in general, we are a 4-season country, so it is also getting warmer now in Canada, now that we are approaching the summer. But we do have other seasons as well, like spring, fall, and winter. And a lot of people are sometimes concerned about the weather, especially during winter times in Canada. And I'm pleased to let you know that British Columbia is actually one of our mildest climate, our mildest province in terms of the climate. In fact, when we are averaging the temperature of the province of British Columbia, usually the average temperature is not below 0 degrees. So in other words, during winter time is not too cold, not too harsh, but when during summer, it's not too warm either. So the differences between the temperature between those seasons are quite small, and that's why the temperature are generally relatively mild. And then some of the other provinces that are also quite popular and gaining popularity now, that we start seeing more momentum, where student mobility are spreading to other provinces at a more significant pace. We start seeing more international students, including from Indonesia, looking at other provinces as well. Just to name a few, Quebec is about 10%. So all these are global statistics. So it's not just to Indonesia, but this is actually based on the data from international students around the world. So Alberta is now gaining popularity as well. So some of the popular cities will be like Edmonton, Calgary. Quebec will be like Montreal. Manitoba, around 3%. Nova Scotia as well, around 3%. And also for the rest, are spread it out across the rest of the provinces in Canada, including the Atlantics. Now, in terms of top field of study for international students in Canada are also quite consistent. We are very proud of the quality of our STEM programs, and it remains still one of the popular field of study for international students, including from Indonesia. So they will be looking at STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, business, and of course, some of the other fields under natural and social sciences. I do have a slide on popular degrees that majority of international students are pursuing right now in relations to job market opportunity that's happening in Canada. So I'll be sharing that information a little bit later on. But let's put the context, because I'm sure everyone is somewhat curious and maybe listening into the social media for all kinds of information about the changes that are happening in Canada. And probably the biggest question in someone's mind is Canada still accepting international students? How is the number of international students or Indonesian students currently studying in Canada? Has it dropped significantly? Are there still Indonesian students in Canada? And maybe all sorts of questions. Maybe hopefully through this data that I've prepared, it may address some of those concerns and questions. So this first diagram that I want to share with everyone is to reflect on the number of study permit holders from Indonesia. But of course, you need to be mindful that not in all Indonesian citizens are from Indonesia, but these study permit holders from Indonesia, based on 2024, at this moment, as you can see in the diagram, was slightly decreased compared to the previous year in 2023. So if we look back at almost 1 decade, we can see that the number of Indonesian students have continued to increase consistently, with the exception of 2020 when COVID happened. But it remains positive even post-COVID. And this is probably last year was the time when we start seeing the drop. When we calculate the drop, it's close to about 20%. So it is quite a significant drop, but I think overall, when we are comparing Indonesia with maybe other countries around the world, these relative drop are quite moderate compared to the rest of the world. As for the number of study permit holders from Indonesia, so this is a total of all the valid study permit holders. They are in Canada, they are from Indonesia. You can see that the trend is somewhat similar as well. When we are looking back at about the last 15 years, we can see that the number has consistently to go up, with the exception of 2020 when COVID happens. And in fact, post-COVID, the rate of growth has become higher, up to 2023, where we have exceeded 3,000 Indonesian students in Canada, although, of course, by 2024, there was a slight drop as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit context about where Canada is right now. And there has been changes in the numbers of student recruitments, especially when we are talking about the big four destinations like US, UK, Australia, and Canada as well. It is definitely interesting times for these four countries, including Canada. But I'm pleased to inform you, hopefully through this presentation, that things have quite stabilized after last year. We have recently completed our federal election. The new Prime Minister, His Excellency Mark Carney, and his cabinet has all been appointed. We have recently appointed a new minister for IRCC, and it seems that hopefully, as the cabinet will start prioritizing on the areas that they need to focus on, that we will start seeing stability starting with this year and also in the following years to come. But enough of the updates. I like to focus more on the fundamentals that I think is very important for us to understand, especially in our line of work as we provide information to students and parents about Canada as a potential overseas study destination. We need to be aware of all the relevant benefits or advantages that become value-added benefits for the students and also for the consideration of the parents as well. And for that, I will summarize those advantages and benefits in three aspects. The first one, we will start by discovering Canada a bit more. We will be looking at the quality of life. We'll be looking at what Canada offers in terms of their multicultural society and also the other aspects about the healthcare access that are very affordable, not only to the Canadian citizens, but also to the international students that study there. We will also explore about the quality of education under learning in Canada. We'll exploring about the different institutions, between the differences between colleges, institutes, polytechnics, and universities. We'll be looking at popular programs of study and other matters that are relevant with regards to the quality of education. And last but not least, apart from the quality of life and education, we'll also be looking at the work integrated learning programs offered in Canada and how it plays a very important role in ensuring the success of students, not only to study in Canada, but also to have access to potential work opportunities during and after study. So that's the general content about today's training, but I like to jump into more details, and hopefully all these tiny bits of information will be useful for you as you provide more insights to your students and parents about the opportunity of studying in Canada. So let me begin by emphasizing again on the rich experiences that Canada can offer as an overseas study destination. I also would like to highlight that Canada has consistently ranked at the top for our quality of life. And quoting from one of the recent global ranking, there are prominent out there, such as the US News Best Countries ranking for 2024. Canada once again ranked in the top 5 for quality of life and also racial equity. Of course, Canada being one of the multicultural society, we have representation or international students or even Canadian citizens as immigrants coming from different parts of the world, and that really add into diversity of the population. In terms of quality of education, I'm pleased to let you know that Canada, again, as consistent as its popularity as an overseas study destination, Canada also ranked in the top 4 for quality of education, quoted from the same ranking, US News Best Countries Ranking 2024. I also would like to highlight to you that Canada's co-op program remains one of the most competitive one. In fact, we are one of the leaders and the front runner of our co-op program that remains to be very competitive globally. And we have the largest co-op program in the world. And we also offer PGWP, post-graduation work permit, that continues to be available to international students, especially if they are pursuing degrees up to 3 years. And combining these two experiences between co-op and PGWP and other work integrated learning programs will play a very important role in the success of students, not only with their education, but also their future career, whether in Canada, overseas, or back in Indonesia. So again, we talk a little bit about the multicultural aspect of the Canadian society, but it's not just the diversity. In fact, one of the great things about the Canadian population is that in addition to the diversity, Canada is also a very inclusive and welcoming place for international students to live, to study, to have access to work opportunity, and just to connect with the international students from other parts of the world, and also, of course, with the Canadian citizens themselves. That's why we boast a very comprehensive Canadian experience. These pictures on the slide probably can only, it can only explain a part of that experience. But we have a lot of testimonies of international students that have really experienced the full measure of these Canadian experience. And we hope that your students and parents will be able to experience this as well in the future. So if Canada is somewhat relatively new to you, I'd like to raise this to your attention that Canada is actually the second largest country in the world in terms of our land size, and our population is around 41 million people. So it's not a very dense population as a country, especially when we factor in the land size. But majority of our Canadian people, or majority of the people in Canada, do stay, or they do live in the southern border of the country, which is very close to our neighbor United States. Most of the provinces are also at the bottom. I've mentioned quite a few of them, like Ontario, right in the central Canada, British Columbia and Alberta, and also Saskatchewan and Manitoba in the west. And of course, we have Quebec here, and also the Maritime or the Atlantic provinces. And we start seeing more and more international students, including from Indonesia, spreading out through all these provinces. In fact, there is an organization that's called PEMIKA, Persatuan Mahasiswa Indonesia Canada, which is a Indonesian student associations in Canada, and they are actually now quite spread out in multiple cities across Canada. Starting here in British Columbia, we have PEMIKA Vancouver and Edmonton. Sorry, PEMIKA Vancouver and Okanagan. And then in Alberta, we have PEMIKA Edmonton and Calgary. In Saskatchewan, we don't have a PEMIKA yet there. And also in Manitoba, we have PEMIKA Winnipeg. In Ontario, we have Permica Toronto. In Ontario, we have Permica Montreal. In Quebec, and all these Permica, they send their representatives to form Permica Nacional, which is basically to oversee all these Indonesian student associations that's in Canada. So as you can see, not only that the number of Indonesian students that study in Canada are growing, but they are also spreading to different parts of Canada. So let's move on a little bit again, also from the perspective of the economies in Canada, because this also plays a role in terms of the job opportunity and the job market for not only for the Canadians, but also for international students maybe looking to do off-campus, on-campus work, internship, or co-op. So I'm pleased to let you know that Canada continues to be one of the competitive economies and a very attractive economies, not only to for investment, but also for professionals to start a career or maybe to start to do startup as an entrepreneur. So Canada ranked number 2 to headquarter a corporation for those interested in investment in Canada. Canada also ranked number 6 to start a career, number 6 for entrepreneurship, number 10 for foreign investment, and number 11 to start a business. So by being a very attractive economy in the world, this will offer potential opportunities for businesses to open and to allow for more job supply and availability for people in Canada. Not only that these private sectors are only interested in establishing their operations, but a lot of these private sectors or companies, they are also interested in doing research partnerships with our Canadian institutions, universities and colleges as well. So just to give a few examples about the partnership between Tesla and Dalhousie University on lithium-ion research, and then Carleton University in New York with Shopify, and just many more possibilities and examples of partnerships between the academia and the private sector. In terms of entrepreneurship, Canada is definitely one of the front runner. In fact, 2 out of the top 5 university incubators in the world are in Canada, and they are at McGill University and also at the University of Toronto. So this is a little bit information about the startups and the kind of startups that are popular in Canada. So as I've mentioned earlier, Canadian entrepreneurship is ranked number 6 in the world. And we are also one of the country with the big number of startups. We are actually in the top 4 for our number of startups. And we have these different major cities that have very strong, robust industries in these areas that allow students, especially as we are looking at the millennial era, a lot of students are interested to explore all this digital field of study. So cities like Ottawa, Toronto, Waterloo, Vancouver, Montreal, Edmonton, Quebec City, they offer a lot of potential and strong industries that will provide job opportunities in this area, like big data analytics, fintech, clean tech, AI, and gaming, and also many other fields that are also very high demand and very tech or green oriented. And these are very beneficial when combined with the field of study that are also equally available and offered by the Canadian institutions. So not only that student will get the knowledge from the classroom setting, but they will also be able to practice, put into practice or apply that knowledge in a real work setting by hopefully working at these industries. So that's to give you the overall context about the rich experience that Canada as an overseas study destination can offer, not only from the academic perspective, but also from social perspective and also from the market opportunity perspective. Now, let's learn about the quality of education in Canada. Now, first of all, there are many ways to start a journey in Canada. But as I've mentioned to you, since 3/4 or about 75% of all of our international students are mainly interested in post-secondary education when they are considering Canada, then I will be mainly looking at these two categories: the universities, the colleges, the institutes, and the polytechnics. However, before I begin, I'd like to highlight this important point that Canadian high quality of education doesn't just start at the post-secondary or graduate level. In fact, this level of quality has already been displayed even at a much younger stage. So I'm sure most of you being in the academic or in the education industry, I'm sure most of you are aware of the PISA benchmark. Now, as far as I can tell, the latest PISA report is still dated 2022. So this is still based on the most current data available out there. And this gives the snapshot of the global students' performance in reading, mathematics, and science, particularly from OECD countries. Now, as you can see, as marked by that big red arrow, you can see that Canada is again not only one of the 15 countries where their students average for mathematics, reading, and science, all three categories are above average, and that's why they are marked with the blue boxes. So there are only about 15 countries out of the entire OECD countries. And Canada is in the top 5 or 6 out of those 15 countries. And definitely one of the very top among the Western countries as well. So this shows that the level of quality of education that Canada offers starts across multiple level of education, starting from the primary, secondary, post-secondary, and even all the way to the graduate level. Now, before we go on into the offering of the degrees of these different institutions, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight about the differences between the institutions. You need to be aware of the differences of the universities, colleges, polytechnics, and institutes to be able to advise your students better. Because there are many different credentials and programs out there. There is the certificate, 1-year certificate program, 2-year diploma program, sometimes 3-year advanced diploma. We have 2-year associate degree. We also have a 4-year bachelor degree, a 1 to 2-year master degree, and sometimes 3 to 5 years PhD degrees. So all of these degrees are definitely offered at university. But colleges, institutes, and polytechnics, being an applied institution rather than research-oriented institution, they tend to focus on these following credentials. So their highest credentials are usually at the bachelor level, bachelor degree, although they also offer graduate certificate or graduate diploma programs for students that have completed their bachelor degree, but not quite interested in pursuing master or PhD, but rather they like to focus more on the applied skills that can help them to find a good job, or maybe to have a different field of study than what they have studied at the bachelor level, but rather than go back again and study another 4 years, which is going to be a lot of time and money involved. So they rather go for a shorter program like a graduate certificate or a graduate diploma to equip themselves with the necessary skills and knowledge that allow them to be successful in getting a job and develop their career. But as I've mentioned, in general, the university degree tend to be more research intensive and research oriented, with the bachelor, the master, and the PhD degrees. Although there are some universities that also offer certificate and diploma programs for more short career focus programs. So I'll be very quick with this ranking and information because I'm sure you can easily find this in multiple global rankings that are available in the internet, like QS, Times Higher, or ARWU. But I like to emphasize here that Canadian universities do have very competitive and strong programs in our business, including our MBA, and also in agriculture, forestry, for sciences, and of course in STEM, I've mentioned science, technology, engineering, math, including computer science, environmental science, engineering, and life sciences as well. Now, for the colleges, as I've mentioned to you, we have the shorter applied programs like certificate, diploma, associate degree. But I like to emphasize there is an overlap between colleges and universities, and namely the bachelor degree. Although the bachelor degree at colleges tend to be more applied, where university bachelor degrees are usually quite widespan across multiple concentrations, while bachelor degree at colleges or polytechnics tend to be more focused in one particular area. But even though university tend to be more research oriented or research intensive, it doesn't mean that institutes, colleges, or polytechnics in Canada don't have research. Because in addition to our practical and work integrated learning programs, colleges and institutes and polytechnics in Canada, we also involve very closely with applied research when we are collaborating with SMEs, small medium enterprise, in looking at ways to refine or upgrade their products, service, technologies, and other processes. In fact, this stat might surprise you a little bit because Canadian industry actually invests more capital, more money into higher education, research and development than any other industries in the G7 countries. So it is no wonder that Canadian colleges and universities perform a higher rate of national research compared to most of the OECD countries. If you're looking at the bar diagram there, you can see that Canada's rate of national research is actually higher than the G7 average, and also one of the highest compared to the other Big Four destinations. So this is a quick summary of the highly sought degrees in Canada, not only among international students, but I see a lot of Indonesian students are also interested in these areas. So just to quickly summarize them, artificial intelligence is a massive thing. I've attended many seminars where now the hottest topic is all about artificial intelligence. And I think this is where Canada can play a very important role, because not only that our private sector, the industries are flourishing in this area, but our universities, our institutions are also offering very solid, good quality programs in these areas. Not only artificial intelligence, but also computer and data science, IT. I will not go into the details of the different focus and concentrations. You're welcome to take notes of that. But of course, business, commerce, or management are also very important. Engineering, biological, biomedical, health, life science, environmental science, and sustainability, another hot topic that are becoming the focus these days. And Canada is also one of the front runner for sustainability. There are a lot of talk about climate change. It's really funny. We are now in the month of May, but I'm looking at the window right now, right outside, and it's It's been raining whole day last night, and it's still cloudy outside. And this is like, in the middle of the year. So definitely there is some climate change happening right now. And that's why there is some important emphasis in environmental policy, renewable energy use, and so on. But of course, I've also added a few more at the bottom, like actuarial science, art and design, digital interactive media and communication, education and teaching, hospitality and tourism, law and legal studies, mainly for business law, international law, corporate law, and then psychology and counseling. These are all very popular degrees. Now, very quick note on medicine, because I've noticed that medicine is also popular among Indonesian students. Unfortunately, in North America, US and Canada included, you cannot pursue a medical study at the undergraduate level. So the closest it gets is for you to pursue a biomedical degree, which you can, but the medicine or the medical study will begin at the graduate level once you have graduated with an undergrad degree. And also a disclaimer, majority of the faculty of medicines in Canada are not yet open to international students, but there are a few that do open. For example, University of Toronto, they are open, the faculty of medicine for international students. But as you can imagine, the level of competitiveness of that program must be quite tremendous. All right, now I've looking at my time, I probably only have about 15-20 minutes left, so I like to move on to one key aspect that really draws a lot of interest from students and parents when they are considering Canada. Of course, the quality of life and the quality of education are very important, but a lot of students and parents are looking at the possibilities of work opportunities during or after study. Now, keep in mind that students need to maintain their full-time student status. That means the priority should be still on studying and education. They need to do full-time study during the fall and spring semesters. They may opt for something else, maybe for holiday, maybe work full-time during summer semester or just during the school break. But generally speaking, students need to be aware that they can only work part-time and study full-time. So during studies, students have the option to work on or off campus. There is no limit in terms of the number of hours for students when they are working on campus, but when they are working off campus, they can only work for up to 24 hours per week. And this is something that they can explore without additional work permit. So they have their study permit, and that study permit will allow them to work on or off campus legally within the allowed number of hours. Now, of course, students can also look at other full-time work opportunities which are served as part of the program. So on or off campus are work opportunities that are not part of the program of study. But the following that I will mention now, like co-op, internship, field placement, practicum, these are full-time work, and that's why they require work permit, because during this time, the student generally will stop their study, maybe for a couple of months, up to one semester, at least for a year, within a year, for them to be enrolled in this co-op internship program, so that they can get real-life work experience that are relevant to their field of study. Now, before I dive in deeper about the differences of the co-op and internship program, I also would like to re-emphasize the work opportunities that are also available after you have finished your study as international students, which is the post-graduation work permit. So depending on the length of study, and this will be covered in more details during the visa section presentation. So I will not overlap myself in this area, but I just want to highlight this as an important benefit because, you know, most international students from Indonesia that I know of will be looking to take advantage of this, which is the post-graduation work permit, where they will be able to get a work permit without a sponsor. So they don't have to find a job first to get the permit, but they need to graduate, apply for this permit, and once they get this permit, and it can go up to 3 years, then they can use this permit to find job more competitively, because workplaces no longer need to be concerned of of the challenges of becoming a sponsor before they can get the permit for the student, because the student already get the permit themselves. So these post-graduation, these different work opportunities are also made available for students attending all these different institutions. But I do need to highlight about the PGWP, as you can see in this on the screen, that working after graduation under PGWP are available for students attending college, institute, polytechnics, if they are pursuing bachelor degrees. If they are pursuing shorter programs or other programs like associate degree or, not associate degree, like diploma, advanced diploma or certificates, then they need to be aware of the type of programs that will allow them to get PGWP. In other words, it's not all field of study in diploma and certificate programs will be eligible for PGWP. Now, the list of programs continue to be updated, and I'm sure this will be covered later on by the visa section presentation. So I better move on because there are other other important materials that I also want to share with you. For example, the difference between internship and cooperative education, which I think is very important for you to know. Internship is generally short-term, but as I've mentioned, cooperative education can be quite long. It can be from 4 months, 1 semester per year, all the way to 16 months spread out across 4 years. Usually students will not do co-op in the first year though, so they will start their co-op experience usually starting 2nd year, 3rd year, and 4th year. Internship may or may not be for credit, but usually cooperative education will be part of the academic programs. Now, some of the co-op can be required, some can be optional, some may not have one, but that will have to depend on the field of study that you are pursuing. Another great news for students, internship are usually not paid. Some can be paid minimum, but cooperative education students are usually paid, even at minimum salary. So the screen on your right, just to show you, that's the minimum hourly wage rates that are being offered to those that working part-time usually. So when a student is at a co-op program, is actually working full-time. So usually the rate will be slightly higher, better than the minimum wage. But you know, even at this rate, as a full-time job, students can actually earn a fairly good money out of the co-op programs, and that will also serve as a financial aid for the students in addition to possible scholarships. I shall move on a little bit and explain a little bit more about this co-op, because I think this always interests a lot of students and parents, and they really want to know how does the co-op's program works. So first of all, students need to be at a good standing, academic good standing, to be enrolled in this co-op program. Usually the requirement is for students to be at least 3.0 GPA, so B average. It's not too demanding, but at least to make sure that the students are strong academically and that this co-op component will not affect his or her study adversely. But this co-op program is supposed to complement the learning of the students outside the classroom setting. So as you can see, starting the 2nd year, student can have at least 1 semester work term which is about 4 months long, working full-time in a real company in the area that's relevant to their study. And they can do this multiple times throughout their entire study until they finish. So that's why I've mentioned earlier that it can range from 4 months, 8 months, 12 months, or even 16 months. Generally speaking, though, if students are quite diligent and they ensure at least one work term every year, by the time students graduate from their university or from their college with a degree in one hand, they will be able to have at least 1 year of experience that they can also highlight in their CV. So imagine a combination of a well-known, globally recognized degree combined with local experience working in a real company, in a real industry that provide them not only with the experience and the knowledge, but also the networking to the employers and to the players in the industry. So those are definitely very important component that can be crucial to the success of students' study and future career. Now, I will not be able to go through all these testimonies and examples, but just to show you quickly, co-op works. There are so many Indonesian students that we have met, have very powerful testimonies about how they do so well in terms of their career, and it doesn't start after they graduate. In fact, all the necessary blocks take place when they are still studying. So, for example, like Anthony here, you can see the wide range of experience, professional experience that he has developed throughout his entire study because he graduated in 2017. And all these experience take place before he graduated. And this can only happen because he did co-op. Now, another example that I want to show, a lot of times, the work that they do as part of the co-op will become good references for them to find a job in a similar industry. For example, Evan Goldwyn, as a student of financial analysis and risk management, as you can see, he has built very rich experience in the financial sector and consulting sector with EY, Manulife Insurance, Royal Bank of Canada, and PwC, again, also another consulting firm. And he ended up working as a manager for business consulting, financial service risk management at EY. And sometimes the co-op work end up being where they work as well. So, for example, Nico Alimin, his final work as a co-op is in Microsoft, and he ended up now working as a software engineer at Microsoft. Looking again at Christina doing intern at Google, and she ended up working at Google as a software engineer, and so on. And it's not just all STEM either, but also other programs that are also available for international students as they explore the co-op opportunities. So because of time, I'll not go through every single testimony, but these are some of the newer ones. Most of you probably know Sociola, especially the ladies. So John Marco Rashid is actually a Canadian alum, and he's the co-founder of Sociola, and also the board member of Passapolis, which I believe is the largest online platform for insurance in Indonesia. And let's move on now on some of the numbers, because I think apart from the statistics, I think it's also important to know about the level of investment that are to be expected when studying in Canada. So let's start with the education fees. So for international students to study in Canada at the undergrad level, generally looking at an average about 40,000 Canadian dollars for university level, and a lot more affordable at a college level at about 15,000 Canadian dollars. So this is our yearly fee So if it's a bachelor degree, then you have to multiply it by 4 to give an overall idea about the level of investment. Graduate programs are usually more affordable, with the exception of MBA, because MBA are generally quite expensive, can range from 40,000 even all the way to 100 grand. But sorry, I mean 10 grand. But for graduate programs, is usually for other field of study other than MBA are usually about 23,000. Now, cost of living is also a component that must not be overlooked, because when you submit study permit application, you need to be able to show proof of finances that are able to cover not only your living expense, but also your tuition fees as well, at least for 1 year. So you need to be aware of both. And the cost of living requirements for study permit application right now is set at about 20,000 as per latest regulations from IRCC last year. And there has not been any change since then. So just to give you an idea though, is Canada getting expensive? Probably yes. But is it now one of the most expensive cities in the world? Most definitely not. Because if you're looking at on this screen, then you are also able to see that our cities, even though have increased in terms of the cost, and Toronto and Vancouver being the most expensive Canadian cities, they are still quite affordable when we are comparing them with the counterparts from our neighbors in North America, for example. Of course, we have to compare the cities apple to apple, so major cities against other major cities. So you can see that these numbers represent the ranking of the cost of living. So the higher the number, or I should say the smaller the number, the higher the ranking, the more expensive it is. So as you can see, Canadian cities continue to be affordable, especially when compared to their counterparts in North America, Europe, or even in Asia Pacific. I will not go into much detail about the international student application, but I do want to emphasize that the starting time for international students, the most ideal time is usually for fall semester in September. But there is, of course, another intake that can be considered, which is the spring intake in January. But we definitely encourage students to apply early, because now more and more institutions have earlier deadline, and the earlier deadline can start at middle of January. So that's like 7-8 months before the intake begins. But generally speaking, the application has, the registration is open 1 year before the intake itself. So for example, if student is going to start at fall intake in September, actually the registration will open by October the previous year. Okay. Now, for counselors, if you are from schools that implement British pattern, Cambridge curriculum, GCE, A-level, international baccalaureate program, then this is very important and good news information for your students, because most of the Canadian universities, they usually offer credit transfer, advanced standing credit transfer, which means based on their grades, students may receive credits even when they are admitted to the program. So the implication for that will be the duration of study will be shorter, because there will be less credits to cover, and that also means lower tuition fee. Okay. Scholarships are available. This is the link to the scholarships offered by the government of Canada, but they are not for undergrad. Most of them are for graduate studies, so for master and PhD. For the undergrad programs, usually international students will have to rely on the scholarships offered by universities. So that's why Canadian scholarships offered by universities generally Not a lot of them have offered full scholarships. There are a few from UBC and University of British Columbia and University of Toronto, but generally speaking, most of the universities, even though they don't offer full scholarships, they tend to offer quite generous scholarships. And they can be categorized into two. There is the entrance scholarships that are usually based on the high school grades, and a certain amount will be given only for the first year. But for students with higher academic standing, stronger academic performance, they can also be offered, in addition to the entrance scholarship, the continuing scholarship as well. So that means these are larger scholarships because they can be renewed across the 4 years, but they are usually quite competitive, and they may require slightly more complex application. The entrance scholarship, the good news, they are usually automatically considered. So students don't even need to apply or submit separate application. They will be considered based on the transcript that they submit for their application. But for larger scholarships, like the continuing scholarship or the renewable scholarships, they may be looking at other factors like extracurricular activities, financial institution. So it may require some references and separate application process. But I like to remind everyone again, it's good to put in effort trying to find different scholarships. That's also another advice, rather than just trying to find one big scholarship, which everyone will be looking at, and hence the competition will be a lot higher. The suggestion usually are for students to be looking at the different range of scholarship with smaller amount that can be combined together. But on top of that, I also would like to remind students, and hopefully for counselors and consultants listening to this, you can also remind the students that different work opportunities that we have, that I've covered earlier regarding on-campus, off-campus, cooperative opportunity, these are all paid work opportunities that can serve as alternative source of funding. But of course, students need to be mindful that they still need to provide sufficient financial proof of financial when they apply for the study permit. So they cannot rely on these to cover their expenses, because this is something to be expected when they are already in Canada, and it's also looking at the current job market situation and so on. So funding is still very important and need to be prepared. But these can be great additional source of funding to help reduce the financial burden of parents, for example, that students can explore. All right, and I just want to finally update you of some of the upcoming events that may be important for you to note. Study in Canada Fair will be back again to Indonesia in several cities across Indonesia. But the main events will be in Surabaya and Jakarta on in the weekend of October 25th and 26th. So these are our contact details. I'm sure most of you have already engaged us. So, but if not, do screenshot this screen. So you are welcome to contact us. We'll be happy to hear from you, and if you are interested to talk to us some more. Thank you very much, everyone.